House on Eden is a 2025 Canadian-American film written and directed by Kris Collins and stars herself along with Celina Myers and Jason Christopher Mayer. The plot follows a team of YouTube paranormal investigators as they find a mysterious house in the woods for their next project. And if that already doesn't sound interesting to you, because it is possibly the most generic sounding plot of the entire year, this probably won't be for you. And really, I'm going to try and be super fair here for several reasons, but the most important one being the fact that this is the director's debut film. That said, this was a pretty rough watch for me, and not entirely terrible, but almost baffling, just the fact that it exists. So you've got three main characters here who are almost the only characters you ever see, and they're going to investigate this house because it looks creepy. Only it kind of doesn't. It's just kind of one of those cool older houses in a rural area, and sure, when they randomly walk in, it's got a few like occult things here and there, but the set design was mostly pretty lazy, I think. I mean, this house should have been kind of like a character of its own, in my opinion, and it just needed to be more. It needed to be scary, and it wasn't. I think the first problem I had with with this film was the setup was pretty much exactly the same as we've seen time and time and time again. Because this is a found footage style film, by the way, I should have said that. The three characters, they aren't particularly interesting, but they aren't the worst either. The acting is passable. And the next thing that bothered me was the intentional shaky cam, which was so fucking disorienting at times. And I'm not being hyperbolic, I'm not exaggerating here, but it almost made me sick. I almost, for at least a minute or two, thought I might have had to leave the theater and just go home for the night. But luckily, it's only really like the first 20 minutes or so. But that's kind of a long time. It's a short film. It's like an hour 17. And I said intentional because, the characters, they kind of make it clear that they aren't the most, like, technologically adept people. So, interesting choice, I guess you could say. Aesthetic choice, but not really a great one. I don't think anyone's gonna like that aspect. I mean, if the camera work was like disorienting for atmosphere reasons or to add some creepiness, it might have made more sense. But yeah, I don't know. And the next thing that threw me off was definitely the writing, because for like the first 15 minutes or so, the crew seems to get along great, like three best friends. You could tell. I think the at least two of the characters, maybe all three of them, are actually friends in real life, so that helps adding some some realism and some depth to the relationship of these characters. But then it jumps right into a scene where they're like at each other's throats, just nagging at each other, and you're kind of like, where did this come from? There was no lead up to it, or even like there was no hints that like, okay, maybe there's a little bit of animosity between these people. You just didn't see any of that coming, and it was weird to me. It just came off as a bit sloppy, a bit amateurish, because of the lack of nuance, of course. But it does set up, that Kris, played by Kris Collins, is a bit of a selfish person who doesn't always appreciate her co-host Celina or cameraman Jay. It's just so tonally inconsistent, though, between the three characters. And also, so I guess Kris Collins is like a famous TikTok star. But I hate TikTok. I've literally never been on it, so I don't care enough really to look into all that. I mean, especially after watching House on Eden. Sorry, Kris. But anyways, so back to the house. Kris sees the name Lilith a couple of times, which doesn't ring a bell at all. So she does some research. And so I used to study religion and demonology and stuff like that quite a bit, so I knew the name Lilith right away and where it was going. And I would kind of expect anyone into stuff like paranormal investigating and occult stuff, to also be familiar. But that could just be me. Maybe my expectations were set a little too high. But it was at this point that where I was just like, also, when is this going to get scary? Because, we're halfway through, and I haven't even been remotely, like, creeped out yet. And I mean, this goddamn thing clocks in at, like, an hour and 17 minutes. So I expected a compact story that was paced appropriately. But, nothing of much interest happens until, like, the last, in my opinion, the last, like, 10 minutes, maybe. And those 10 minutes were solid, but the problem is everything that leads up to it. The final scene is actually really cool, in my opinion. It's kind of like my cup of tea, with some nice shots and some great imagery. But it doesn't go anywhere, and you don't get any explanation as to why it's happening. It does add some mystery, of course, which is what they were going for. But at that point, it was just too little, too late. House on Eden tries to be like a Paranormal Activity-esque, found footage horror film with some folk horror elements, but none of those are really properly fleshed out, which is kind of unfortunate. And I mean, I think it's cool that, some Shudder original films get played in theaters now, but they really need to work on their quality control. I mean, Kris Collins' TikTok fame obviously helped, make this happen, and that's fine. But in my opinion, this is such a subpar movie that not only can I not understand why someone would write it, but that a company like Shudder would get behind it. So I'm giving House on Eden a 4 out of 10. Which is more than fair, I think, considering a hack website like Rotten Tomatoes has it sitting at 10%. I'm kind of doing it a favor here. But man, I mean, these are the kinds of found footage movies that give the genre a bad name. I thought we were done with this shit, but I don't know. And although I want to give Kris Collins the benefit of the doubt, I can't help but feel like this might be a weak cash grab attempt. I don't know. Cheers, guys, and I'll see you at the multiplex.